The Delaware Way continues now, and we're joined by Bruce Elliott from 1410 and 1450 News Radio in Wilmington. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Glad to be here.
We just had Sean Barney on and talked a lot about Chip Flowers. Yeah. And you had the last interview with Chip Flowers.
Yep.
Maybe ever.
Maybe ever. He's indicated he's not going to give another interview until he leaves, which is January. So basically he's going to wash his hands of the media. Flowers feels he's been badly treated by the media, particularly by the News Journal locally, but by most folks in the media, and he's simply not going to talk anymore. We were grateful to have him on to tell his side of the story, in essence, where he feels he's been victimized and frankly just doesn't want to go through it anymore. And to be really honest, the timing of this does sound kind of funny, that these charges happen to come up in the midst of a primary battle. So there is a little bit of doubt there.
There's no question the Democratic Party wanted him out, the governor wanted him out. There was several people that he couldn't get along with. Certainly the Cash Management Policy Board didn't get along with him. So he did seem to have a lot of enemies, and he seemed embattled. But when I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago when he was here, before all this stuff came out, he thought that was going to help him. That because the governor came after him, because he looked like an outsider taking on everybody, that would actually help him. But this, and explain what happened. Explain his news conference and the tearful news conference. What's happened since then?
Well, what's happened since the news conference, which was a Friday ago, he said, I'm not going to talk to the media anymore. I talked with him over that weekend, and he said, I'll give you one last interview, and he came on. What I find interesting about the story is a broader cultural issue. And that is, we're supposed to have the presumption of innocence in this society. But if you're in corporate America, or if you're in politics, or if you have a high profile, there is not the presumption of innocence if you are a man and you are accused of sexual harassment. There is the presumption of guilt. Prove you did not do this. And that's kind of uniform. And that overlay, I think, is a very interesting aspect to this, to take a look at, is this a fair circumstance? All the other candidates piled on Flowers immediately on that Friday. As soon as the charges came out, there were calls from every other campaign that he immediately withdraw, because the presumption was he was guilty, the political presumption. And I think he made the calculation that that was going to go on throughout the entire primary and throughout the general election. And for him, it just wasn't worth it.
So you don't believe the fact that he withdrew from the race in and of itself is some evidence that he was guilty?
No. Ray Donovan, who I think was Secretary of Commerce or Labor, it seems to me, under Reagan, I do believe, was put on the griddle like this. And eventually, after all was said and done, he came out and the reporters asked him, what did he have to say? And he said, yes, can somebody please tell me where I go to get my reputation back? We do tend to build people up in order to knock them down. I make no presumption of guilt or innocence. He has struck me as a straightforward guy when we've talked to him on the air. I don't know if he's a bad guy or if a good guy, but I do know that I would presume innocence in this kind of circumstance rather than presume guilt. And I think that we presume guilt because it's useful politically or because culturally there's a bias.
Let's talk about the race now. So you have Sean Barney, who seems like he's going to be the Democratic nominee now, and you have two Republicans running. What's the general election going to look like?
I think the general election is going to be Ken Simpler against Sean Barney, if I had to guess. Simpler's argument isn't just that Sean Barney is Markell's guy. His argument goes to competence. His argument is, I've been doing these kinds of functions for 20 years. I managed $1 billion portfolio, a large staff, dealt with staff in 12 different countries around the world, and that nobody else, neither Sean Barney nor Cher Valenzuela, who's the other GOP candidate, they don't have that experience. I think that's going to be the simpler pitch. Whether or not that's successful, I don't know. And whether he gets by Cher Valenzuela, who has attributes on her own. She's charming. She's run for a statewide office in the past, and she has a strong base of support inside the GOP.
In Delaware, how important is that office?
I think it's hard to tell because my perception is so skewed because the last handful of years with Chip Flowers. It's supposed to be a detail-oriented office where you make sure the books are straight. I mean, your job is to safeguard the taxpayers' money. It's not a position for advocacy. It's not a position for a springboard to the next office. It should be, this guy has the technical chops to do this job. And that's not what it's been recently, so it's hard for me to gauge.
No, and it's interesting you say that it's a springboard to the next office, because that's where Markell came from. And when you talk to Sean Barney, he talks about the fact that he's an Iraq War veteran, and he's bringing in Bill Bradley, and he talks about literacy, and he talks about expanding the width and breadth of the office and what they're going to deal with. So it would appear to an outsider like me that he's already thinking about the next office. And so do you think that could be held against him as he runs for this office?
It's hard. This is a very blue state. It's an uphill climb now for most Republicans to run for statewide office. There are districts inside Delaware you can run as a conservative or as a moderate Republican very successfully. But running for a statewide office, I think all you have to do is put a D behind your name and be the nominee, and you start with a 15-point advantage.
Although the auditor is a Republican, so you can win.
And that's exceptional.
And will this be the race?
I think so. It's fun to watch. If nothing else, it's great entertainment. Each step of the way. I mean, I've been fascinated by the mechanics of what's been going on. I think it's actually too bad that Chip Flowers bowed out, because I would have liked to have seen how the Democratic primary went and who came out on top. I'm very interested to see how the GOP primary goes, whether Cher Valenzuela's support inside the party outweighs Ken Simpler's technical ability to do the job, and I have no sense of that at all, none.
Well, it'll be fun to watch. We'll watch together. Bruce Elliott, thank you so much for joining us from News Radio 1410 and 1450. Would like you to stick around for And Another Thing and join our panel, because Ellen Kaloje is not here today. So
you got a deal.
All right, we'll see you then. We'll be right back.